Wow, I got everybody here early already. Good morning. Can you hear me? Yes, good job. Louis got a nice mask on.
Well, we're meeting with groups of 10 or more, right?
Yeah, I got one too. Put it the right way. Mine's reversible.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Mine is, but I can't tell which side is in and out except for the bending of the nose, the little metal piece.
Well, the nose piece bends back and forth.
Right. But if I keep it one shape, then at least I see that.
Smile.
Nick?
No,
Smile.
I'm considering that, that your nose piece goes back. My nose goes back and forth. So turn it around.
So everybody have a good week.
Delightful.
Yeah.
Delightful.
A little rain,
Delightful.
sunshine.
A little rain, a little sunshine.
Yeah, I was going to have a stressful couple of weeks because of a lot of legal things that were happening. And one after another, they all got kicked over. I had some courts for these cases. I don't even want to do them, but I have to. You step in shit, you got it on your shoes. And every one of them got kicked over to like July and August. There's one day hearing. Huh?
Are they sending you emails with the new dates? Or how are you finding the new dates?
No, I think they're sending stuff to my office. I'm only going in once a week, but I'm getting it. I'm just being proactive. Hi, Gail. How are you? I'm being proactive about it, just going ahead and looking each one up at the courthouse and checking. Right. And there's one that really was going to bug me. That was June 4th. I also have jury duty June 4th that week. So, but that one got vacated. That's a small claims appeal, which is, they'll put that's low cockalorum. If that happens in this century, who knows?
Well, I had one. I had one for May 6th, but it still says that it's going May 6th. So Sonoma County Small Claims hasn't changed their stuff yet.
Yeah, well, if they're going to have the hearing, the question is, you can't have a Zoom hearing because I have actually, I'm stepping in. My client hired me to come in for the appeal, and I have documents and explanation, and I'm not cross-examined. It doesn't work like a regular trial. But how do I get it in front of the judge since there's no pre-hearing? There's no way to give them documents.
True.
So we'll see. But that's got pushed off, which is fine.
We got Scott and Gail and Michael now here.
Hi, kids.
Hi, kids.
I'm finding out that every day is a bad hair day.
Well, I have a clippers.
It's a too much hair day.
I've shaved the dogs. I've shaved the husband. All good.
I'm not getting close to you.
I did a really good job.
I'll bet you did. There's
Morning,
Linton.
everybody.
Hi, Linton.
Hi, Linton.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. I need to get my bell, so I'll have something to ring.
Michael, what are you doing with yourself these days? Michael Fells.
I'm writing a lot.
Oh, good.
A lot of time for that. So
yeah,
that's good. It's good. I'm spending a lot of time writing and gardening and staying home. Yeah. It's okay. It's not that different from what I usually do, actually.
Yeah. I miss, what I miss is the ability to go out and sit someplace with it for a cup of coffee.
Yes.
That I miss.
That.
Yeah.
The rest of it I can put up with. But
I miss not getting together with people. I think that's the hardest thing. And not being able to look forward to, I've been doing a lot of that, and it's not having that as something to, have on the horizon, I find disappointing, but that's not too bad.
Yeah. We've postponed our trip back to New York now 3 times.
Wow.
Trying to adjust with the ebb and flow of the virus, but I think we're committed now finally to go in the middle of July.
Which part of New York? The city or?
Yeah, to the city. Yeah. I have granddaughters and a grandson there now. So
meet them up in Westchester.
Oh, nice. Yeah. We shop in Westchester, Costco.
Well, the good news, Nick's in a community where he's visiting the daughter up Washington Heights. It's kind of like a closed community. It's like one way in and one way out, unless you want to walk those big steps going down. So
Yeah, it's a great neighborhood. We like it.
I read an interesting op-ed yesterday. I don't know if anybody else saw it in the Press Democrat on the editorial page, but it said, we now have a new distinction. It used to be poor and rich, and it used to be
Oh,
people who were able to do, basically it was economically determined. Now is people who can afford to stay home and people whose job either requires them to be present or for whom staying home is a crisis.
yeah, I read that too, Gail. The new dichotomy is between protected and exposed,
Right.
and that's very meaningful.
Yeah. Yeah.
My wife is a teacher and she needs to keep working, but suddenly she has to do it from home. And which
Yeah.
is a huge
Hey, Diana.
change, but at least she's able to do it from home, she has to, which is.
You see, both my son and my daughter-in-law have jobs where they have to go. Now, the good news is they have jobs. The bad news is Morgan manages the whole food store friend. And so he's constantly in touch with people. And my daughter's a pharmacy tech. My daughter-in-law is a pharmacy tech at CVS on Stony Point, and she's constantly in touch with the public.
Yeah.
They don't have jobs that they can stay home.
Yeah, my daughter's a paramedic here in Sonoma County, and my son-in-law is a deputy sheriff, and they're living with us right now. So we feel
A little vulnerable.
we're happy that they're very diligent in their precautions.
Yeah, well, I'm in the same boat. I live with my son and daughter-in-law, and they're very good about changing their clothes and all that stuff. But I thought that editorial, at any rate, was interesting.
It was a very good distinction.
I wonder if there's really some kind of incidence that shows people that have loved ones that they live with that are in the community and those services that did come home to protect their family.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any reports on that.
I've seen reports in the national news about that, but I haven't seen anything locally about that.
Mhm.
On the upside, I have a friend who's a psychologist and he does a lot of testing. So he's gone digital with the testing, which wasn't possible before. And he says he's getting better results on the tests doing them over Zoom than he would face to face.
Wow,
Higher
interesting.
response rates and more accurate diagnosis as a result.
Hmm.
So
That's interesting.
kind of weird.
Yeah. Well, my daughter is an emergency room nurse in Roseville, and she says that the COVID cases are very small. The hospital has few. What she's found is all the people that would utilize the emergency room for not really emergencies are now staying home, which is good from her perspective. But she said the increase of patients coming in with mental illness is like way higher than it ever was.
Yeah, one of the counterintuitive factoids about the pandemic here locally is that
Somebody
my daughter,
start music on, they need to
AMR,
mute themselves.
yeah,
And then mute yourself.
calls, the AMR ambulance calls have dropped like 30 to 40% because people are not driving. They're not driving drunk. There are not as many people out doing crazy things. And as you said, Lori, a lot of the people that with very marginal reasons to be calling the ambulance are staying away from the emergency room. So AMR employees, some of them were on part-time because the ambulance is not being called.
Yeah, she said that she's getting a lot of auto accidents from the high-speed drivers, though.
Oh,
So,
Go figure.
Go figure.
Expensive.
Yeah,
They
that's
have
what.
open roads, they can go like 10 miles an hour faster.
Well,
10
and
miles
also,
an hour,
you know, I have a son who's,
people going 100 miles an hour on the freeways. Lots of tickets for those.
Yep.
I have a
I
son who's
found
out and about a
myself
lot.
going, I found myself going a little faster, and before I realized it, it's kind of understandable.
Mhm. Well, I can't go too
Well,
fast
you're
on
used
the.
to sitting behind traffic, so, you know,
Who jumped in? I didn't
not
hear
in the
that.
back road.
like-
Linton, she was gonna
Get
just.
lost in.
Good
Oh,
morning.
It's Nancy.
I just
Hi.
joined.
Hi, Nancy.
Can't get lost in the potholes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, a lot of places are fixing those roads.
Morning.
Since they're closed. It's or reduced traffic. That's good. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
We'll be starting on time, like in 3 minutes.
Woohoo!
Woohoo.
Did you have a nice birthday, Linton?
It was lovely, thank you. Yeah, my wife had a surprise Zoom party for me,
Oh, perfect.
which was not such a great surprise because she asked me for a list of people,
Aw.
and in that list was my own email address, and she didn't check it very carefully. and she, anyway, yeah. So,
Did you
but
get
it was
Zoom
really
cake?
fun. What's that?
Very
Did you eat Zoom
sneaky.
cake?
Well,
Very sneaky.
she made a pineapple upside down cake, which she thought was the funniest thing. I asked for that, and she said, "That's not a birthday cake." And I said, "So, but it was,
That's what I
it was
want.
good.
Well, it'd be a birthday cake if they put candles in it.
That's right.
It was."
Hey,
Yeah.
we
And I
always
got to
had
cut the
chocolate
pineapple.
pie. We never had cake. We had chocolate pie.
Ooh.
And there's nothing better than a really good pineapple upside down cake.
Have you all been out to Dillon Beach recently?
No.
It is so beautiful, and there's very few people there, and you're not supposed to go there, but there was like maybe 20 people on the whole beach, and we went there on my birthday too. And we got food from Danucci's. You know that Italian place?
Oh, yeah.
Love that
Fantastic.
place.
I feel like you're in New York. I mean, it was
They have the
amazing.
best
Yum.
prawns there.
Yeah. That was my birthday.
Okie dokie. Let's see what we've got here. I want to share my screen.
At Danucci's, you're always full by the time your entree arrives, though.
That's true. Then you get to bring your food home. The slideshow.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
There we go.
Slideshow from the beginning. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Wednesday morning Rotary Club of Sebastopol Sunrise meeting. Everybody good?
Yep.
Good. Okay, let's see here. Let's see what's wrong with my buttons. Well, my pledge person isn't here, so who can step up and do the pledge? No pun intended. Step up.
I can do that.
Okay.
Okay. Face the flag of your choice, as long as it's an American flag. And we pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
States of America,
and to the
the
republic
republic for which it stands,
One nation,
one nation,
God,
God,
indivisible, with liberty.
liberty and justice for all.
And we're coming up on Memorial Day, and I want to say thank you to all of our vets and people maybe still serving who help protect us. And how many people here today are vets?
Hello. Yes,
Michael?
I am.
Who else?
Jerry.
Good morning. Thank you. Okay, well, thank you for your service and helping keep us all safe. And you are, there we go. And Charlie, do you have some words of wisdom? Charlie, are you not here?
Nope.
All right, let me get my words of wisdom book out right here.
My word of wisdom.
Okay. This is from the 8,789 words of wisdom, and it says on page 390, accept things as they are, not as you wish them to be. pretty
Well,
good.
that's appropriate.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's the payment it spoke to, so that's interesting. Wave,
That was Washington. Kidding.
wave everybody, hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hey,
Hello.
Joe,
Good morning, President
good
Lori.
morning.
Well, what do you think? It's a pretty nice morning this morning, huh?
It is a nice
Yeah.
morning, and says you
It's
have two.
beautiful.
What a beautiful
The
morning.
window, it's really terrific. So I thought, originally, not that we've ever done this before. Oh, what a beautiful morning. Look at that.
Groundbreaking.
All right, here we go. There's a bright
Like golden haze on the
meadow,
meadow,
the bright
golden haze
the corn is as high as an elephant high, and it looks like it's climbing clear up to the sky. Oh, what a beautiful morning! Oh, what a beautiful day! I got a beautiful feeling. Everything's going my way.
Joe? All right, do we have any cyber Rotarians out there that checked in? Visiting Rotarians, anybody? Nope. Okay. And how about any cyber guests? Anybody got guests with them there?
I don't think so.
Nope. So it's a party of us. Well, I didn't get many submissions for the morning drink, so this is what I got. Nope, I don't rise and shine. Most days I just caffeinate and then hope for the best. And I don't know who sent that to me, or maybe I just stole it off of, who knows. But it's true. And happy birthday, none this week.
Wow.
And we have happy anniversaries, Pam and Jim. And Pam's not on, I don't think. And PJ, your anniversary coming up. What you gonna do? PJ, I saw you there.
Mute.
Oh, he's gonna mute on his anniversary?
Baby.
Hi, I am definitely here.
Okay, what you gonna do with your beautiful bride?
Well, let's see. On the 24th, it's I always get it around Memorial Day. That's why I picked that as a wedding day.
You always get it.
Oh, Memorial. What's that? Oh, hell. Anniversary. So I have become not overly bragging, but I've become very good in the kitchen. I'm a good chef with great recipes. So making up something special for that opportunity, because I'm still not convinced that sitting around in a patio in an outside restaurant is the way I want to work things. And then like today, we're going to have a 5 o'clock Zoom experience with an expert on sea otters. So we're going to join in on that. So I'm picking up 4 or 5 different kinds of opportunities to kind of memorialize the 24th. So should be fun.
And how many years is it going to be?
40.
Wow, congratulations on
Yeah, almost as old as me.
Or a child's groom, huh?
That's it. She stole me out of the cradle.
There you go. And sea otters are so cute to watch when they lay on their back and, put their their food on their chest.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It'd be interesting. He's a wildlife expert in this species, so it'll be pretty intriguing. I'm sure he'll have terrific photographs and footage.
I bet he will. Okay, well, that sounds good. And guess what? We have some Rotary anniversaries. And guess what? 23 years ago, Rotary Club of Sebastopol Sunrise was created by these folks. So what do you guys have to say about all this fun stuff you did many
Yay.
Yay! Yay! I believe it's been 3 years since the 20th.
Exactly.
So here's the question. how many years did you have before the 23 from this club?
17 in the Optimist Club.
Okay. And Joe, what about you?
I think it was 6 years in the Noon Club.
Okay. And DMR, are you on here? Nope. And Marty, I sent you the link early this morning because you
Yeah, I
lost
got it. I'm on, but it would be probably 18 or 19 with the Optimist.
Wow. Well, thank you for starting this wonderful club. I've enjoyed it so much.
I thought
All
Mark
right.
Reese. I thought Mark Reese was an original.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't.
I don't think so.
He was, but I think they took him off when he left for a while, and then so I don't know if
Louis.
technically he is a
But
charter member.
he'll always be a charter member, regardless of whether he
So he
was.
should have been on that list. The only thing is maybe when he left for a while, they started him over with a new date.
I think that's probably the case. I'll check when I get home. Barbara, you had something to say?
Louis.
No.
Louis.
And Louis too.
Louis.
Louis was a.
original. I'm original.
And I had about, oh gosh.
You were
I
on
had
it,
about
David.
17 years with the Optimist too, before that.
Okay. Well, I'll have to go home and check that list that I have because I thought I got the dates. But anyway, thank you to all that were the original charter members.
President Lori and Marty, if you ever lose the link to our meeting, go to our homepage, left-hand column, click on Zoom, and you're in.
Yay for our website.
Yep.
Or go to your calendar if you.
I've saved it now. I've saved it.
Yeah.
Well, I
Or
think
4 in
I-
the morning we could call
for the
Lori.
rest of the year. Oh, not the rest, not only of my year, but going into Barbara's year as well. I think through September, but I can't be sure. So this Saturday is the Libby Park shredding or moving around of the park. So we're supposed to bring our shovels and rakes. And we'll be safe distancing with our masks and
I
hopefully
think rakes as opposed to shovels.
Yeah.
rakes, right. And then my husband says, well, do you need to bring wheelbarrows? And I says, well, they won't fit in my car. So I don't know about that.
If you have one, we'd love it.
Well, it won't fit in my car.
I'm bringing one.
Oh, it's behind you.
I'm sure we'll figure it out.
Okay, perfect.
I've got one.
Just a quick question. Are there going to be sanitary wipes of any sort on site?
Not a clue.
No
You're
idea.
supposed to bring your own gloves and have gloves on. Provide all your own stuff.
Well, of course you have gloves on. I mean, that's a given. But if we're sharing tools and stuff like
We're
that.
not sharing tools. You bring your own rake, your own everything. We're not sharing.
BYOR.
Yeah, you watch. There'll be plenty of shit.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea.
So it's BYOA, bring your own alcohol. Hand
Michael M., are you here?
I haven't seen Michael.
Okay, and then we have the June 6th river cleanup. And
Good
we'll
morning,
get more
everyone.
information as we get closer to that one. All right, and this is what it looks like, I think. I don't know if they've done any more work, but I was pretty impressed with.
Yeah, they've done more work.
They've done more work?
It
Good.
looks different than that now. I did see bags of stuff laying around.
Okay.
Those are small children.
And do we have Anna online with her adventures?
Well, so that's a picture of Anna asleep over there. No, that's her exercising. She's sleeping in today. She was up late last night.
It looks like she's exercising her hands with her cell phone.
It looked like that to me too. It's some sort of Brazilian thing. I'm sure it makes everybody very physically fit.
So I want to know if you staged the picture, because I see the Rotarian magazine on the coffee table.
That's always there, just in case you're going to look.
Ah, okay.
I was nervous. I didn't want to get fined.
There you go.
David, is there any consideration that she may not want to go back to Sao Paulo right now?
Not from her, not from her parents.
Okay.
So things are moved out now. She was supposed to be able to leave June 1st, but not only is her airline not flying, the airport she was going to fly through is closed.
Okay.
So they adjusted with the airline, and it looks like it will be end of June, around the 29th or so currently, and they're going to see if they can move it up. She's ready to go home now. She's, enjoyed her stay, done what she should do, and that's it. There will be, or it looks to be that there's going to be some sort of annually graduation that includes like coming in your car, getting out safely, walking down to a place where you pick up your diploma and look at the people who would have shook your hand, and then walk back around by the flagpole, get back in your car, we honk and we drive off. 1 car per student. Can you imagine what a scene that's going to be? I'm trying to foist it off on her other host parents, making it look like we wanted to go but couldn't get in the car.
Well,
I have the gown for her if she wants to wear the gown.
Well, we got all that stuff we thought as a rental, but it's coming in, and they do actually make it in different sizes. So I think she's in good shape.
Okay.
So yeah, she's going to do that graduation. She's excited about it. She's still doing her school work every darn day. Last night, she had a project that had to do with food. Fortunately, I'm so glad that she took a cooking class.
David, Health Department put the kibosh on that. No, seriously. They put the kibosh on the graduation.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
And
our health department did, the state did.
Ours.
Oh,
It's
well, never mind about that.
It's in a wait zone right now. We don't know for sure.
Well, that's cool because we can drive down there anytime we want and as often as we like. She can get out, she can walk the route and,
go.
Exactly.
Pick up paper.
My friend in Lake County, what their school did is they gave each student a time to be at the school, and they got to be in their gown and go up and get their diploma. And the school was putting it all together as a video. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's what they were going to do here, but I guess people will just have to send videos of themselves. By the way, there was an announcement from people might want to know. One is Annalee High School and El Molino both have selected not to have internationals in next year, so we won't have an inbound. And I pick up a rumor, and I think it's true, that our district will close down exchange for next year. So Julian, fortunately, is a sophomore next year. So I think we're looking at him going out as a senior, if that would be okay with everybody.
I think so. Okay. Well, guess what? We have Marnie's 3 minutes of fame, so she can tell us all about herself. Are you ready, Marnie?
Sure, you bet. Can you
Okay.
hear me okay?
We're good.
Okay, I can't see myself, but
Right.
anyways, can you see me?
Yes,
Yes,
really.
yes, we can.
Okay. All right, good morning.
Good morning.
Who am I?
Oh.
Well, for starters, I'm an immigrant, a hippie, a Harvard MBA, and a mother. And Harvard does not define me. I've come a long way since immigrating to America from Sri Lanka, also known as Ceylon, famous for its tea, with my parents in 1958 as a shy 12-year-old who hid behind mom's saris when meeting strangers. I happened to be a preacher's kid. Dad was an English Methodist missionary in Sri Lanka, and mom was Sri Lanka's prima ballet dancer. Oh my gosh. Once in America, we settled near Portland, Oregon, where I graduated from Portland State University. As a 20-something woman, I was part of a pioneering class of women admitted to Harvard Business School for an MBA, Master's in Business Administration. It was only the 6th year that they had allowed women into the Harvard Business School to graduate. We were awake to new possibilities with Women's Lib. I was a bra burner. I co-founded and chaired Harvard's New Business Women's Association. My first job was at CBS Columbia Records in New York City after my MBA from Harvard in 1972. Thrilled to have landed a fabulous position assisting the director of special markets, AKA R&B soul music. The poster I hung in my office was Thoreau's maxim, "Most men lead lives of quiet desperation." Not me. My music work was exciting and I was grateful to build the future of soul music. There are gold records on the wall and a song in my heart. But I recently ended a long-term marriage and it was a challenge to catch my breath as I launched into the next stage of my life. My marriage was wonderful on many levels, not the least of which was that it gave me the opportunity for a 3-year gap sabbatical, 84 to 86, during which I sailed 8,000 miles on our 31-foot sailboat Nefertira with my hubby and my 6-year-old daughter, Lanka. We sailed, cruised, and adventured from Ventura to Florida via the Panama Canal, anchoring along the way at various ports and islands in Mexico, Costa Rica, Panama, and other Central American countries. We learned self-sufficiency on a shoestring budget, Spanish, fishing, snorkeling, how to share with and befriend other cruisers and locals. I also homeschooled 1st and 2nd grade for my daughter, who went on to Columbia and then Harvard for her PhD. Lanka is now curator of drawings and prints at the Museum of Modern Art, MoMA, in New York City. Wow. And I am blessed with a 20-month-old grandchild, Ione Ray. I look forward optimistically to my ultimate intergenerational collaboration, sharing, learning, and guiding, which will enrich the last fourth of my life and that of my precious granddaughter. My hobbies include music in all forms, dancing, kayaking, sailing, Zumba, yoga, meditation and sewing, gourmet cooking and entertaining. I appreciate the arts, archaeology, architecture, interior design, outdoors, nature, and gardens. I am a lifelong world traveler. Whether it was hard work or serendipity, my gratitude for fascinating work lasted for a 4-decade management and finance career in music, movies, and radio in New York, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. Feeling blessed is not to say I didn't have my share of hard knocks and challenges along the way. Throughout my career, a guiding mantra for me and those I've mentored has been to let your work follow your passion. For me, it was never just about making tons of money. I raised a family, was honored to be a leader in my community, and made time to sail with my family for that 3-year voyage of discovery. Last June, I was blessed to attend Chip Conley's Modern Elder Academy in Baja, Mexico. I gained insights into the making of a modern elder, navigating this midlife journey and reframing a lifetime of experience. I received a certificate in mindset management and emerged feeling more relevant, resilient, adaptable, and empowered to create what's next. I've been fortunate to balance business acumen with an open mind, an expanded consciousness approach to life, and a deep joy of living. As I've aged, I'm inspired to imagine how much we should morph into sage elders who collaborate and exchange our perspectives and talents with younger generations when our paths crossed. After retiring in late 2011 from KGO Radio, where I served as business manager and controller, I learned a new use of the phrase gray matter. Experienced professionals of a certain age, usage, youthful startups often hire gray matter to bring wizened knowledge to their efforts. That felt perfect for my new quasi-retired handle, and Gray Matter Consults was born. I continue using my skills, knowledge, and wisdom via business and financial consulting when I have time. I've reset my sails and pulled out my compass to plot the last fourth of my wonderful life. Recently, I met Garrett Turnauer, a fabulous local Sebastopolian who is my beau and fellow traveler in life and love. Now I sail into the sunset with heart and new purpose. I embrace evolving into a sage who is of service. Sunrise Rotary, who I was introduced to by my dear friends Nick and Teresa Randall, feels heaven sent to meaningful sharing and service with other allied spirits. I believe I share the basic components of wisdom, and I'm ready to take them to the next level. So here I am. My path has me knocking at your door.
Ah, hey, we're going to have to sit down and get more into that information. We're super happy to have you in our club, and thank you for sharing that.
Marnie,
Yes, yes.
Marnie, we are looking forward to introducing you to Rotary travel. You have not experienced the world until you've experienced Rotary travel.
I look forward to it. Learning about and seeing those slides from the travel to Africa, where I have never been other than Egypt, was eye-opening. And I really said I was on my bucket list. And if I can do some of this through Rotary, which I think also has opportunities in Sri Lanka, that would be fabuloso.
Absolutely. And do you know Don Sprodlin?
I do.
Yeah,
I do.
he used to be in our club.
I understand, yes.
He's an amazing person.
Yep.
We're going to move on. I'm going to skip through a bunch of stuff because we have our speaker coming up. Let me get back here.
Hey, Mr. McLaughlin.
Okay, so last week in review, this is the stuck at home size of, I think Jameson is whiskey, right?
Scotch.
Irish whiskey.
Scotch. Okay, well,
Irish.
so that shows how much I drink. And Kathy had to cancel her activity from Hawaii when she canceled her trip. Looks interesting. I don't know who would do that kind of crazy stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's probably a Dan Needham.
Marty.
Yep. And Joe installed a new sink in his house. That looks interesting. Alcohol. And I found this omelet recipe here. And so I seasoned
Excellent.
with sugar, oil, chocolate, and threw in some flour and made this beautiful omelet. And Nancy, yes, I will share this with you.
Perfect.
Thank you, Bill Sauber and whoever else cleaned up the triangle. And we're going to do that one later. Thank you, Judy, for our daily diversions. I liked the barbecue and barbecued asparagus and corn and tri-tip this last week because of that slide down there.
I'm starting to wonder with the new, we're being allowed out a bit more, and I'm starting to wonder how much longer it's appropriate to do them.
Well, I love them.
Most of us are still sheltering in place.
Yeah.
True.
Well,
So,
I think as long as you want to do them, we're happy to look at them. It's
You
fun
got
and learning and educational. All right. And weekly announcements from the club. I think Linton had a announcement.
Well, you may know Tor Allen, who's a solar energy guy here in town. His daughter knows a 25-year-old young woman who's going to graduate from Cal Poly and come up here and do some work in the wine industry, the Emeritus Winery, and is looking for a place to stay from the end of June through the end of October. And Lori, if it's okay with you, I'll just put the information in the chat.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Or
And
they
then
can, people can contact you if they have any leads, and then you can put the information out.
and there, Tor's email and Maya's email are both in this chat. So if you're interested, of course you can contact me. If you don't get the chat stuff, I can email you the same thing. But that's it. That information is right in this chat.
Perfect. Anybody else with club announcements?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
I just joined. I couldn't get in. I just wanted to remind everybody of the work party Saturday at Libby Park,
Yep.
9
9
a.m.
to 2.
Yeah.
Michael, we have 18 people signed up and I only sent it out once. So that's great. And the only person that didn't receive it is Marnie. Your email didn't work, Marnie, so I'll reach out to you for your correct email.
I have it, Kathy, so you
Okay.
can look at it there.
Lori,
Yes.
real
Lori,
quickly.
Lori, I have a quick announcement.
Well, just a second. Rod has one first, and then Jerry, I
Real
think.
quick, this information came from Rotary International. If you're wondering what's happening with our foundation, the bottom line is, as of a few weeks ago, $18.5 million has been dispersed through clubs, through Rotary clubs, specifically for COVID-19 projects. So the RI is responding, and thanks to David Mark Raymond for passing that on.
Okay. And I think, was it Jerry, you had something you wanted to say?
Yes. Following the board meeting on Monday, I sent money to the Okwalagabo village that we've been supporting in Uganda, and they picked up the money and are purchasing food for 50 families in that area, and very much appreciate it, and they'll send me more information and photos to follow. Thank you.
Excellent. And is our speaker on yet?
Robert, are you on the call? Not yet.
Lori, I have an announcement too.
Okay, Michael, go for it.
So the Nepal vocational training team came here last fall, went back, and they formed a group now that's stuck together, and they also have a COVID-19 hotline that they set up that's being utilized by the public there. So they're all doctors, so this is an authoritative source of good information for that. They're also in lockdown like we are at this point. And we've also filed a progress report on that grant because we didn't use it up, and we got a proposal for how to build on what was already been done. So we're excited to follow their lead in extending that further into Nepal. So it's a milestone that we just hit the submitted state in that report yesterday. So we're still working on that and expect to be working on it this coming Rotary year.
Okay.
That's us.
Robert, have you jumped on yet?
I suspect he will be here shortly.
Okay.
Stuck in traffic.
Stuck in traffic.
I will go ahead and do my quote for the day in the meantime, if I could.
Sure.
I actually have two of them. One is Einstein's, one of his most famous quotes, but first is what he actually said. And this is documented what he said. It can scarcely be denied that the supreme goal of all theory is to make the irreducible basic elements as simple and as few as possible without having to surrender the adequate representation of a single datum of experience. Got that?
No.
Okay. Well, his friend Roger Sessions, a composer, said, you know what Einstein meant in essence is everything should be made as simple as possible, but not simpler. And that's Einstein's famous quote, not actually said by him. Robert, are you on? Well, he expected to be here about 5 minutes before 8. So I just checked the mail and I don't have anything from him.
Well, I probably messed him up because I tried to get him, I connected with him last month thinking he was speaking the very next day. We went back and forth and I says, oh, okay, well, the sheltering in place is messing me up, but I do know that he responded yesterday. He might have a problem connecting also.
Yeah, so yeah, he did confirm yesterday, so I'm not sure what went wrong, but hopefully he'll be along shortly. And in the meantime, I'll try and get back on my desktop to where I left his resume.
Okay, well, while we're waiting for that, I'm going to go back up in my slides because we have an opportunity to get some money into our community fund. This is some wonderful coffee that was for our silent auction that didn't happen. And it looks like it's 3 different kinds or two different kinds. And I'm wanting to raffle that off here. So who would like to start this? I'll start it with $20. Who wants to jump in with 25?
Very presidential.
I do.
25.
How about 30?
30.
40?
35.
40?
50.
50? Do we have
Will
60?
you keep me on your list and let me know?
Oh, Marty mute.
Who's on a call?
Marty just bid.
Marty just.
Wanted a haircut. I'm sorry. Barber called. I answered the phone.
$60.
Okay, so where are we with?
Me yet.
All right. Where are we with our coffee bid?
Marnie's at 50.
Marnie's at 50. Do we have 60? Okay, going once, going twice. Marnie, $50. You can send the check to Barbara, and you can let me know when you can come to my office and get it. I'm here in Sebastopol at the Sebastopol Specialty right before the hospital. And
Okay.
I will deliver it to your car when you call us.
And Marnie, the coffee is delicious.
Yes.
I can imagine.
And Robert, are you on? Because I see somebody else just joined in.
I am.
Okay.
Great. Good morning, Robert. Thank you very much for joining us.
That's all good. Thank you, Charlie.
I do want to give you a brief introduction here because your resume is really an interesting one. Everything on it says a certain date to the present, which means all of these things listed are things that you're currently doing simultaneously. And it's a long list. And I'll pick out some. You are a professor of economics and director at the CREA. You're also a professor of economics at SSU, and you're dean of the School of Extended and International Education. I hope I got that right.
You did.
You're the chief economist for Marin Economic Forum and a board member on the Redwood Credit Union's board. And your name is probably known to a lot of us because we've heard you speak on various economic topics. And you're probably the most quoted economist in Northwestern California. Thanks again for coming, and take it away.
Thank you. Folks, I'm going to...
Robert, do you have slides that you want?
I do. Can I share my screen?
Yep, let me stop my share and then you can share yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So hopefully you're going to be able to see just my screen now.
Yep.
Is that true?
Yeah, we got it.
And so I'm going to, I think, mute all of our people, or can my people be quiet?
Let's mute.
No problem.
Let's mute, and then I think you unmute yourself. Yes, I'm going to allow them to unmute themselves. I think.
Okay, so you should now hear me.
Yes.
Okay, so that we won't have a silent movie today. So here we go. Folks, it's been a really wild time. So as a macroeconomist, it's been also a very intellectually intriguing time, but I'm going to try to move you through the macroeconomy quickly and what we think we know, get us down to the local level and what we think we know, and then what we should be looking forward to in terms of change. Getting out of this is going to be sort of a sum of 3 policies. The first 2, which are positive, are what we've seen with interest rates on the monetary side, when we hear about this huge fiscal stimulus package coming out of Washington and slowly hitting the street across our communities, is the fiscal piece. And it's offset by the negative of the social piece, this sort of shelter-in-place situation we've been under. And the hope is that the 2 other policies in sum will outweigh the negative of the social policy. And we don't know that yet, because until the shelter-in-place is fully lifted, our economy won't have a chance to 100% get back to something that is a percentage of where we were, to allow those 2 policies to work synergistically together in what an economist would call an accommodative way. One of the big pieces of data we've been watching are so-called new claims for initial unemployment insurance, which means that you are going in for the first time to gain access to unemployment insurance, to EDD. And this is the history from 1986 forward with 3 recessions since 1986. And here's the US numbers. And so you can see the big spike on the far right-hand side suggests how quickly people have lost their jobs. And right now, this is a quarterly average. So the entire quarter of the second quarter from April 1 to present does not encompass all the losses that have happened, but it certainly suggests that we have a lot of people out of work. And right now we're estimating about 36 million people are out of work in the US, about 4 million in California, and about 200,000 in the greater North Bay, which includes Solano County. I'm sorry, this is California. So you can see the similarity in terms of the movement of these data, how they wrap around recession and how it's gone up quickly. The one positive news is that it may be peaking, which usually means that the peak of unemployment to come is maybe coming in about 10 months from now, which is a good sign. And most forecasters, as you'll see in a minute, kind of see those signs starting to show up. Okay, the next piece of data is how long people are on unemployment. So economists are watching now what is called continued claims. If we feel like that the number of people that are initially going in for unemployment is peaking, we want to know how long they're on unemployment. So this is for California over the same timeline. Here's continued claims. I kept the seasonality somewhat in there so you can see how it's somewhat, how it moves in trend, but also kind of goes up and down around the year. And this is the unemployment rate. So normally the number of continued claims will peak, and then unemployment will peak, and then we will start to recover as people get their jobs back and go off of unemployment. Because generally speaking, recessions end as people come off unemployment and go into a job, not go off unemployment and basically have zero income. Here's GDP growth. So juxtaposed to jobs, I now want to look quickly at productivity and income at the national level. We don't have these data at the state level or at the local level yet. That unfortunately will come later this year and then ultimately next year for the local level. But we heard these data last week. You can see on the far right-hand side, the economy contracted, at least in the first estimate, in the first quarter of 2020 by negative 4.8%. The worst quarter of the Great Recession, that third shaded area, the most negative column there, was negative 8.2, and that was after a couple of negative quarters. So we're expecting the second quarter of 2020 to be very rough in terms of the historic drop in the percentage change in GDP. And this is important for 2 reasons, even though it might seem that this is kind of like a hand-wavy, textbooky piece of data. It's important because when we think about dating recession, the change in GDP is one of the biggest ways in which we try to figure out when recessions begin and end. The second is that our equity markets watch these data very closely for things that they did not expect to happen. And these data usually portend changes in labor markets, changes in household income, changes in consumer spending, and a lot of other things to come in terms of our local and state labor markets. Now, speaking of labor markets, those data on GDP then lead us to, well, okay, so what's really going on in job markets? Do we have any data? Well, some data came out last week that suggests what happened in April at the US level. On Friday, this Friday, on the 22nd, we're gonna get the same data at the state and at the county level. And so it's gonna start telling a story about Sonoma County starting on Friday. But here are the jobs that were lost. And so almost every industry in the United States saw some negativity, even health and education, ones in which we've seen some buffering and some relative positivity also sagged a little bit. But the worst ones are the ones on the far right. Retail, other services, which are things like personal services and hair salons, nail salons, kind of our downtown-y style stores. And personal services, and then ultimately leisure and hospitality, which is the sum of hotels, restaurants, and other attractions. So that negative 47.2 should be read as the following way. With regards to April 2019, we are now negative 47.2% from that number, meaning almost half the people that were working in April 2019 have lost their jobs. So that's a significant change in hotels and restaurants. But we kind of knew that going into this because so much of the social policy was focused on our lack of movement, our lack of going out and gathering in places, and those 2 industries sort of encompass visitor support or tourism industries. Okay, so looking forward at the national level, this just came out this week. And these data come from 40 economists that the Philadelphia Fed surveys every quarter and says, hey, what do you think is going to happen with respect to the US economy in specific ways? So this is the forecast for real GDP, the data I showed you a couple slides ago. And you can see that second quarter, they're predicting it to be negative 32.2. So we had negative 4.8 in the first quarter. The second quarter, the middle forecast of these 40 forecasters, the median, is negative 32.2% contraction in the second quarter. But notice the third, fourth quarters of 2020 and the first quarter are pretty good bounces back up from the bottom. But the bottom is going to be such a fall that even that's not necessarily going to pick us up. Notice, and I'll show you in a minute, what happens at the annual level going forward. The other side of that is what's going to happen with jobs. And you can see on the second column of that second shaded area, 16.1% unemployment on June 30 when the second quarter ends. So that's quite a jump from the 14.7 we're at right now, in the sense that that's still rising all the way to June 30. And we should expect the numbers actually to worsen even more than that when the May numbers come out. So these are quarterly data. We only know about April thus far at the national level, 14.7% unemployment. They're predicting 16.1 when it's all said and done. And these forecasters knew the unemployment rate for April when they put this together. So they think it's going to creep up a little bit more and maybe get a little more nasty in May and maybe come back down a little bit in June. But the key is, notice in quarter 3, 4, and then the first quarter of 2021, we see a significant change in unemployment from that peak at the end of quarter 2, which suggests that these forecasters are seeing the end of this year being a relatively good period of people getting back to work. And if you look at the GDP numbers going forward, the overall for this year is pretty negative. So notice again, those positive numbers in quarters 3 and 4 did not quite make up the negative part. And we're going to drop by a relatively historic level in terms of an annual change in GDP for the United States, similar to the Great Recession, not the Great Depression. And then see some relatively decent growth going toward the end of, or toward 2023, so over the next few years. But unemployment is not going to quite get back down to where we started. So one of the concerns economists have is, are we going to have structural change in our economy such that the people who lost their jobs may not be able to get back to work easily? I'll talk more about that in just a couple minutes. Another piece of data to watch is average hours worked. So here's the US average, which usually wraps around 0. In other words, there's very little change from quarter to quarter or from month to month in terms of the actual hours change, unless there's a recession or a really large boom period. You'll notice on the far left-hand side, there's this little wobble underneath the 0 line, which is the Great Recession. And then it kind of weaves around 0 over the recovery period. But let's look at different industries. Here's construction. So construction came out of the gates of the Great Recession pretty strongly and then has faded a little bit the last month or so because construction was also sheltering in place across our country. Even though some places allowed construction to happen, it was at a reduced level. Here's manufacturing, took a big dip. We knew this was going to happen. If manufacturing could not operate because of shelter in place, we knew the number of hours were going to contract, but they did not contract completely. They didn't go down to 0. It just contracted somewhat because some manufacturing was not happening. On the retail side, it's really a mixed bag. So even though we saw retail jobs lost, the trick is that there was some retail like grocery that picked up jobs. And in the balancing act, the number of hours on average pretty much stabilized. Professional services and information both sort of saw either stable or a pickup. So professional services is the array of financial jobs, legal, accounting, etc. But information is really focused on computer coding, computer systems, internet, Facebook, Instagram, social media. And we saw that actually pick up. Why? 2 reasons. 1, more internet sales and more internet advertising. So there was a boost in demand there. And the second is these jobs are also portable. So there was not a reason necessarily to reduce these folks' jobs if they could take those jobs, shelter in place, and continue them. Now, before I show you the next one, though, this is where the pain's going to come. And so we saw the negative 47.2% of change in jobs in leisure and hospitality. This is the change in hours. So on the negative side, March was a spike way down. We saw a real contraction in travel, use of restaurants in terms of sit-down restaurants, and a real slow shift toward a takeout model. But notice at the bottom, the hours have picked back up a little bit because there have been some adaptations and adjustments that have allowed people to somewhat maintain the number of hours, even though we know a lot of people lost their jobs. So the average hours worked dropped quite a bit, and there again is the national average. Okay, housing. So if you take that, one of the biggest concerns we have as economists is that we don't repeat the problems of the Great Recession as we go into this recession. We're hoping, A, that the recession is relatively quick. It might be relatively deep. But by its quickness, we may have people not necessarily out of work for too long such that they want to suddenly sell their home in terms of a panic sale because they don't foresee the job opportunities because of some myopia around labor markets. Zillow who does a lot of predictions and gathers a lot of data about housing markets, are extremely optimistic about what's going to happen in housing, specifically in California. They see the California average rising by about 7.1% over the next 12 months, starting in April 1, in terms of the median home price, which is an amazing change given the last couple of years. For Sonoma County, it's a little less than that. For more rural California, it's in the double-digit growth, believe it or not. There's really no county at all they're predicting right now is going to have negative growth this year, based on what they think is two things. One is that interest rates have fallen such that it gives people reason to demand housing. And the second is that you may see some move of people out of the urban areas that will loosen up housing stock in otherwise a very, very constricted market and move towards suburban and rural areas because they want to get out of the urban mass and their jobs are portable. That's the basic hypotheses underneath, or those are the basic hypotheses underneath the Zillow optimism. Fannie and Freddie, who see also a lot of data in terms of conforming loans. So Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are the two governmental support agencies that basically buy a lot of mortgages from banks and credit unions who originate those mortgages. They see more of a flat growth and not necessarily rising, but not falling. So they're not seeing a repeat of the Great Recession in housing, mainly because we've already had all that policy positivity coming. And as soon as we open the shelter in place, it should support housing market decision making. And that's why we are, generally speaking, the forecasts are for limited growth of prices and certainly not a downturn yet. But folks, it's 100% dependent on the duration of unemployment. The longer unemployment goes, the more likely housing markets are going to suffer. But most of the supply and demand characteristics in housing seem like supply and demand are basically going to walk hand in hand, perhaps with a little bit more demand than supply. Okay. So we're watching depth and duration. We don't want to go too deep and we don't want this to go too long. The one thing we're trying to avoid, and if you think about downtown Sebastopol, so I've lived in Sonoma County my whole life and my family's from the town of Bodega and from Valley Forge. So we've gone through Sebastopol from Santa Rosa hundreds of times, and I used to live in Forestville. So if you think about the downtown Sebastopol area, what we're trying not to do, and even at the city level, is lose capacity. We know people have lost their jobs. That's usually the first reaction. What we don't want to do is lose businesses, because when both those things start to happen at once, they start to feed off of each other. Job losses means less demand. Less demand means I can't keep my business open. Not keeping my business open means I have to do another round of job loss. And the two start to feed off of each other in terms of the local economy. But we know that the job losses are a first reaction. The business losses are if we don't do the right thing in terms of holding on to capacity. And folks, the sum of the parts of the fiscal and monetary policies I started with are really to preserve that second piece, keeping businesses in place. Job losses were coming no matter what. But can we keep businesses from going out of business that should remain in business? And this is a really nasty friction, because on the one side, this can expose marginal businesses to the risk that they were taking and cleanse those problematic businesses out of the marketplace. The problem is that just exacerbates job loss, which then can put good businesses at risk. And that's a real weird game that the federal government and the state government are kind of playing with the flow of funds toward everybody who's in business with respect to things like the PPP lending and other programs. What we don't want is we don't want to lose capacity. And when those two start to feed off of each other, we start to see a lot of vacancies in downtowns, and we start to see a lot less traffic going downtown because there's nothing to go downtown for. Okay, so let's look at the North Bay briefly in terms of unemployment. We're going to see some nasty numbers on Friday, but historically speaking, this is California since 2000 seasonally adjusted, and all these are seasonally adjusted data. There's the last month, so that's March, and we should expect this to spike, just like the graph I showed you earlier with initial claims for unemployment insurance. But here's Sonoma County. Sonoma County tends to follow the state average very, very strongly, though notice that there's a difference between the state and Sonoma County that has maintained itself over the last 20 years pretty regularly. We should expect that again. Here's Napa County, almost following the state average of number to number. Marin County has a much larger difference between itself and the state average, and is usually one of the leading places in terms of employment opportunities with respect to its residents. Lake County tends to be higher, somewhat following, but more volatile. Mendocino County tends to wrap around the state average, similar to Napa. And then Solano County is also similar to Napa and Mendocino. So if you think about how our region is going to be reacting to change, if history is any guide, then how the California economy goes forward should tell a lot of the tale, specifically about Sonoma County. Okay, so let's look and see, these data may tell us how nasty it is actually going to get, because if we think that unemployment claims have peaked, it might tell us where we think unemployment is going to peak in terms of a number. Well, at this point, based on March and April, if you take the number of people that were looking for work or working at the end of March, and you put together all the unemployment insurance claims that have been sought after by workers over the last 2 months, 21.1% of that labor force has asked for unemployment in Sonoma County. In Napa, it's slightly higher. We should expect that because it's a little more exposed to leisure and hospitality industries that have a real gutting in those jobs. Lake County is a little less exposure overall to tourism, both positive and negative. Mendocino, about the same. Marin, a lot less so, and a lot more support in terms of wealth and portability of jobs in Marin County vis-a-vis the other 4 counties. And then there's California. So we're expecting California unemployment rate to be somewhere around 20% by, let's say, the end of May, if it doesn't happen in April. But it might peak around there. And if it does, then June, July, August, or let's say the 3rd quarter of the year should be relatively good in terms of slowly coming back and sliding back down the hill toward more positivity. Okay. So just to kind of wrap up, folks, and I'll take some questions, we should expect some really nasty numbers and Sonoma and Napa County specifically to be really nasty. And if you think about what that means for Sebastopol, it means we're probably going to have a tough few months, especially going into tourism season. Now, for some folks, that's like, great. Now I can, when my coffee shop opens back up, I'm not going to have a bunch of people trotting over me on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. That's great. The problem is keeping those businesses in business depends on that foot flow, especially the downtown businesses that are not bigger chain or big box stores that are connected to national markets. Housing markets should remain relatively stable. And like I said earlier, it all depends on the duration of unemployment. So we're hoping that given the good credit market conditions and the preservation of businesses as best we can, we won't have such complete job loss that sticks around for 6-12 months in a row. And that would lead to a lot more consternation in terms of home ownership. The good thing about having very low rental vacancy is if people want to stay in the area, they can't necessarily, like they did in the Great Recession, sell their home and bounce over to a rental while they're waiting either for a new job opportunity, a place to move beyond Sonoma County, or another house once housing prices have completely bottomed out. We don't really have that rental vacancy yet, but if it starts to appear, it will provide some folks on the margin the opportunity to sell their home, go into a rental in the short term that now might be at a lower rental price, and wait the market out. And then we're going to start to see, especially if unemployment has a long duration or a relatively long duration historically, more things that look like the Great Recession, unfortunately. Hopefully we will avoid that outcome. So with that, I will take the questions you have, and thank you again for having me this morning.
Hi, this is Marty Webb.
Yeah.
How does this downturn affect CalPERS and STRS?
That is an outstanding question, and I've had that question come up quite a few times.
I bet. I'm in STRS.
I'll bet, and I'll bet you're a little worried about it.
I am.
But so if you are a current CalPERS or CalSTRS recipient, in other words, you are a retired annuitant, it shouldn't affect you at all, except maybe the ascension of your benefits alongside of inflation. There's a large amount of consternation about that piece of it, but the people that are not retired annuitants who are CalPERS or CalSTRS providers in terms of current workers who are giving to the system, they should be worried about a change in their benefits more than you should be worried about a retroactive change for what you've already contractually set. State of California will get 100,000 lawsuits in 3 days if current retired annuitants see a change in their benefits without some other changes taking place first, guaranteed.
Well,
and they're going to try to avoid that very deeply.
Great, thank you.
Of course.
Robert,
as somebody who's a CalPERS member, it's something that does concern me for sure.
Robert,
Yes.
are you concerned at all about the hacking into the unemployment system and fraud that is reported in terms of inflating the numbers?
Well, there's no doubt that one of the things, and I usually say this caveat, thank you for asking that question. One of the things that's tricky about the unemployment piece right now is that some folks may have applied for unemployment, then their business gets the PPP loan and basically allows them to preserve their job. They go back to their job, or they end up in this hybrid situation. And I don't know if you're talking about the computer system piece and hacking and being able to access data, or if you're talking about sort of gaming the system where you're receiving unemployment. Okay, cool. So you are going to see some of that. And unfortunately, the federal government has set up a system in which you can kind of bridge between gathering some benefits, but also keeping your job. So it's a really bizarre matrix we're in terms of unemployment insurance. The supposition is that EDD and ETA or ETL are all going to sort of figure that out, and then you might get those benefits for 6-7 weeks, but then if you got your job back and you're working more than part-time, you're going to lose the benefits. So the federal government is playing this game of trying to maximize what households can gain access to without undermining the natural system of how we gain access to unemployment insurance. It's very tricky. But yes, some of that gaming is going on. Some of it is purposeful, but others of it can be because you're able to kind of work the system on the margins.
Thank you.
And
of course.
What do you think about these people that are making more money on unemployment? And so when they're offered their job back and they say, no, I'm making more money, how do we as business owners counteract that?
Very tough. It's
Good
if
question.
you are a fan of socialism, this is a really wild experiment in that space. The idea is that I'm not differentiating between anybody. You go and get unemployment, I'm going to extend your benefits and make them bigger. If you are a resident and I send you a check, you get to keep the money and there's no strings attached. Here's $1,200, knock yourself out. Right? We're sort of experimenting with a situation where there's no strings to the federal government providing money. And with that point, if your benefits are larger and or last for a longer time, if I'm your former employer and I say, look, I laid you off because I didn't think your job was here. Now I'm asking you to bring your job back. What we hear is that if you put that job offer in writing and you send it to the employee and they refuse it, they don't get to keep their benefits if you report them to EDD. So the trick is, are you willing as an employer to say, I made a written offer to this screwball, they didn't take the job, cut them off of their benefits. The EDD may say, I don't know if I really want to do that right now. So politically, there's a lot of issues around that, but what we're hearing from employment attorneys is that if you want to force the that's the way to do it. Problem is you don't want a disgruntled employee saying, hey, thanks a lot for letting EDD know. Now I'm back at work and I'm not a very happy camper, but pay me my money. You know what I mean? And so there's a lot of weirdness going on in that space, but that's a great question because one of the biggest things that economists were worried about is that not only would you have to go through a lot of hoops to get your workers back, but they would also have a marginal incentive not to come back, which makes the labor market functioning per normal a little more tricky.
Do you have any sense of how small Sonoma County businesses have done in terms of taking advantage of the money that the government's offering?
Not yet. We haven't had any data except that, like, for example, I'm on the board of Redwood Credit Union and we've financed about 1,700 PPP loans thus far. But that I only know that because I'm on the board. So we have not seen what you could think of as aggregate at the county level, at the state level, at any real level. Turns that funding, and of course it's come in multiple tranches, so we kind of know where the first tranche landed by the states. The second tranche we don't know yet, and if there's a third one, it'll take even more time to figure that one out. But we are hearing that Sonoma County businesses have access to those funds. The key is whether or not, and this kind of goes back to unemployment insurance, whether or not the right businesses are gaining access to those funds. So I could have been a marginal business that should fail, but for this PPP loan. What's going to happen to me in August, September, and October when the loan turns to a grant, my business isn't back, did that money just get, pushed right through me, another 150 grand, no problem, and then I end my business anyway. There's no filtering about how good your business is. All you had to do was show that you had this payroll over the last 12 months and you were a current business, and poof, the money shows up. So it's a strange experiment we're going into right now about subsidization of businesses and not thinking about what an economist would call adverse selection, given the money with risk to then turn into moral hazard. If the risk fails, what do we do on the other side?
So does that PP money actually just show up in your account if you've been approved and waiting? It just appears?
Yeah, and then you have conditions under which you need to have it to convert into a grant. Right. And it won't convert into a grant until later in the year, even if you meet all those conditions by June 30, assuming that, and really it's an 8-week moving window. Right. But yeah, I mean, I have a consulting business at home. We applied for it because we have people that we had to let go as a result of this, and we got the money. And it took me about 20 minutes.
I know we got the money from Summit for the Boy Scout Council, and it was very efficient, and we got it, in a short period of time.
Yeah. Yeah, but
we've got the
we'll see
notice
what
of
happens with these other businesses and whether they fail or not. There's no strings.
Yeah, zombie businesses. Ed Yardini talks about zombie businesses.
Yes, ma'am.
So what about interest rates going out 5-10 years with all this national debt, et cetera, et cetera? Where do you think, what are they seeing on that? You had some short term. What about longer term?
Yeah, I could have done the whole time today on bond markets and where we might be going. So one thing to think about is
interest rates.
It's all good. There's two angles on this. One angle is that the world will never stop buying American debt. And this is creeping on the so-called modern monetary theory idea, which is a total crock, generally speaking. But it has.
This time it's different.
It might be only in the sense that, but it isn't like the world's ever abandoned American debt since really the 1980s, or even before that. There just wasn't much of it before that. But if you think about it, if America is still seen as the economic centerpiece of the world, and the world savers are still going to look at American debt, especially in a world with otherwise lower interest rates, where else are you going to find yield? So regardless of what, sort of philosophy you prescribe to, if it's a yield chasing world, which generally ROI drives a lot of financial decision making, and we have relatively higher ROI on our bonds, people are going to buy our bonds. And of course, that then squeezes bond rates down further, or at least suppresses the growth of them. So that's one theory, is that 10 years from now, even though we're going to issue this amazing pile of debt, it won't matter because the world will just sop it up, and more focused, or more specifically, we are going to buy a lot of that debt. Now, the other side of it is the more debt you pile up, the more risk you take, which is exactly what happens at home. So that game of how long can you go on like this, and you're going to hear a lot of things about a quasi-Ponzi scheme, things called the Ricardian equivalence, a lot of, hoop-de-doo that you learn in graduate school as an economist. But what really boils down to is if you think about the government as a macrocosm of your home, at some point, we know that the debt bubble's got to pop. Now, it might not pop for 100 years, and thus everybody in this room shouldn't be worried about it necessarily for themselves, but for our kids and our grandkids and their kids, that's where it's going to get a little weird. But we've been saying this for 35 years, and this is why it seems relatively easy to issue that debt, because the world's sopping it up. But at some point, if they contract that, or we get into other financial difficulties, that's where it's going to get a little bit more weird.
How about
But otherwise, the Federal Reserve is not going to raise interest rates, at least right now, probably for the next 2 years. So 2 years worth of probably basically just like post-Great Recession interest rates, expect that.
how about inflation as a response to the amount of
And if inflation starts up, it will drive bond rates up because of risk. So that's one of the things that could change the game a little bit, is if we have goods markets fail us, or if oil, for example, spikes for some reason and starts to transmit itself a la 1979-ish style inflation, that's a possible undermining of that model. But that's going to hit everybody. It's not going to be necessarily specific to the United States. So, but the inflation piece of it, right now, bond rates are so low because our inflation expectations are relatively low. If those begin to rise, bond rates will rise with to cover that risk.
Okay, we're going to have one more question, if there's anybody, and then if you'll stay after we close. Anybody else have a question? Nope. Okay, I'm going to unshare you, I think.
Oh, please, I'm sorry. Yes, I got you. Yeah, I just stopped my share. Thank you.
Okay, and let's see if I can get myself in again. Michael, who's our number 10 person today?
Number 10 is Joe Gadzowitz.
Oh, Joe. Okay, I'll send you a lotto ticket. And if anybody has Bruce and Helene's new address, I still owe them from last week. I haven't gotten the new one yet. And Terry Kelly, do you have a weight clean joke?
I did, but I sure as hell can't remember.
Camel joke.
It's that kind of life. Yeah, Marty, you tell the camel joke.
No, we don't do that. Weight clean joke.
Only Al can do that.
And well, Terry, it looks like you have airplanes coming out of your head.
Well, can't you see it here? I'll move.
Yeah, there you go.
See?
All right. Does anybody else have a joke?
Nothing that's politically correct.
Okay. Well, then we'll put you to next week then, and you can do it next week.
Okay.
I have to leave. I'm sorry. I have to jump on another
Sorry,
meeting.
I have a business question for you.
Thank you, Robert.
Charlotte
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Robert. And
Thank you, Rob.
Marty, you had a question?
I have a business question for you. Is Charlotte back in the
No,
optometry?
nope, not till the 1st of June, and you have to call and make an appointment.
Okay, thanks.
Safe to come out. Look at, we need to wear our masks, all sorts of different kinds here. And the end of shelter in
Are you
place
shared?
doesn't mean the virus is gone. It means that we now have room for you at the hospital. So don't be taking unnecessary chances. Yo.
Are you ready? Here we go. Happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails to you, smiling until then. Happy trails to you till we meet again.
The little horsey goes. It's a unicorn. Thank you, everybody. You are a phenomenal club. Everybody stay safe. Bye.
Bye-bye. Good meeting.
Say bye-bye. I'm going to end the meeting. See you all Saturday for everybody that's going to go rake up stuff. Okay.
Bye-bye, guys.